Hello, everyone who's joined us already. Just to let you know, we're just seeing on my screen in front of me here, I'm seeing the number of participants come flooding in. We'll probably just give it maybe a minute or two. So feel free if you've decided to skip that cup of tea because you wanted to get on at half past to just go and fill it up and bring it over. And we'll probably start in 1 or 2 minutes and get the people doing that. So yeah. We're just waiting for more and more people to come in. So make yourself comfortable, and then we'll get ready to get started. Okay, folks, we have a great number of people coming into to this tonight, and thank you all very much. Hopefully you have got your cup of tea in front of you and your biscuits ready for our presentation tonight. And hello, good evening and welcome to Scottish Cycling's online session tonight on the Cycling Facilities Fund. I'm Graham McLean. I'm the Head of Developing Mountain Biking in Scotland, a department within Scottish Cycling. And I'm part of the senior leadership team within Scottish Cycling. And I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Graham Finney from Sport Scotland. Graham, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everybody. Yep, my name's Graham Finney. I am a lead manager in the facilities team at Sport Scotland. My role is to advise on the design and construction of sports facilities, as well as managing funding into those projects.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Graham. Now, I'm going to get my excuses in early. Tonight, this session was supposed to have been hosted by the excellent Sophie McCall, the Head of Development and Participation within Scottish Cycling. Unfortunately, she's had a family emergency, so you have a real plan, a plan B in so many ways here, presenting this for you tonight. Getting that in early as well, as Sophie has gone to an extra level and prepared a script from it. I will be kind of reading from the script, but hopefully, and I will, because I'm reading probably from Sophie's script, I'll be able to get nice and accurately. But it may not mean that it's quite the flow and the joy of a normal presentation. But I hope you'll find it informative, and I'm sure you will enjoy the presentation and get a lot from this tonight. There's a lot of knowledge, particularly from Graham Finney, sitting here tonight. We've also got behind the scenes, we have Fraser Johnson, our club development manager within Scottish Cycling. He's going to be working the tech and monitoring the chat box for us for the whole evening. The session will be getting recorded and it has been streamed live on YouTube. We will be looking to put it up on the Scottish Cycling YouTube channel as soon as tomorrow. So if you want to tell your friends about it and pass it around or watch it back to get specific points of information, it should all be available on the Scottish Cycling YouTube channel from tomorrow. As I mentioned before, we have Fraser on the chat function. Please ask any questions on the chat and through that. What Craig will be doing is he'll be collating those questions and sending them forward into Graham and myself. We'll also be producing a sort of frequently asked questions guide following this webinar. And this, we hope, will help support people who are looking to consider an application front theirs. Before we go into the body of the presentation and I share a presentation screen with you, just to let you know, we've also got a few quick polls for you to complete, which will really help us understand who's in attendance and where you are within the application process for this fund. So this evening is an opportunity to hear more about the objectives and outcomes for the Cycling Facilities Fund. We believe that this fund will really help us capitalise on the upsurge in interest in cycling. We've seen cycling grow for over a number of different years, year-on-year growth, but no more so probably than 2020 when we had lockdown and the COVID-19 crisis. And we've seen more and more people buy bikes and get into that. What we now need to make sure is, and we have a fantastic opportunity to develop a suite of facilities across the whole of Scotland, which then really will serve those people and be able to introduce them into riding a bike more often, and if they choose to, within club structures, participating events, and then joining the pathway to wherever that would take them within Scotland, within their own cycling life. This, as well as a direct impact of the Cycling World Championships being hosted in Glasgow in Scotland 2023. Tonight as well, we'll be looking to give you an overview of the application process and, really importantly, give you a chance to ask questions of us and get answers. So please make use of that chat box, and Fraser will be monitoring that for us tonight. So I'm just going to go ahead and try and share my screen. Come on. Okay, that should have filled up your screen now. So what's really made this possible has been a fantastic bid for the UCI Cycling World Championships, which will be hosted in August 2023 and in Glasgow and across Scotland. Historic and really innovative event is going to be taking place over 2 weeks, and it's going to be bringing together 13 different cycling disciplines to one unprecedented event. This has not been done anywhere else in the world before, and it's going to see thousands of the world's best cyclists amass on Scotland for a real celebration of cycling. It also gives us a fantastic opportunity for us to profile our sport and our country to a global audience. So what are the 13 disciplines within cycling? They're up here on the screen, and I'll not take the time for tonight to read them out as well. This fund, though, has really been really important to do this. These are the 13 disciplines that will take place, and I'm sure many of you will be cyclists and you'll recognise these disciplines as they are. This fund, though, has been made possible through a new £4 million commitment from Scottish Government and £4 million from Sport Scotland through national lottery funds. Scottish Cycling will be supporting Sport Scotland to achieve the vision of an active Scotland where everyone benefits from the sport, and we will deliver a lasting impact from these 2023 Cycling World Championships. So, as the Cycling Facility Funds provides a unique and fantastic opportunity to develop dedicated cycling facilities, really important we maximise this and achieve as big an impact as we can, and we're really looking to make sure we take as a strategic approach as possible to allocate the £8 million that this fund has. Both the Scottish Cycling Strategy and the strategy for Scottish mountain biking have therefore guided the objectives and priorities of the Cycling Facilities Fund, as outlined in the fund's guidelines. If you are considering making an application towards the fund, or even if you've already submitted an EOI, we really still encourage you to seek out these documents. We'll make them available after the webinar, and really encourage you to read through them, understand them, and see how your projects will meet the objectives that are aligned within it. and this will help make your application as strong as possible. So what are the objectives of the fund? The objectives of the fund are really at the heart of our approach to maximise the impact of it. Ensure new cycling facilities result in the growth in the number of people who are able to cycle, a growth in the number of Scottish cycling clubs, and a growth in our membership, and a growth in the number of people who can access and develop through the pathway within our sport. The three core objectives of the fund are therefore to: 1, inspire the nation to cycle; 2, grow and develop club and community cycling; 3, grow and develop local and regional event opportunities. Taking them one at a time, what does that actually mean? Through the Inspire the Nation to Cycle objective, we're looking at facilities that will provide accessible, inclusive and inspiring places that will enable and encourage people to engage with cycling in all its forms. This could be a pump track, a mountain bike skills loop, a learn to ride area, or any other kind of dedicated, purpose-built cycling facility which will help anyone and everyone develop a love for riding their bike. Clubs. Clubs are at the heart of the Scottish cycling community, and their growth is a focus of the Scottish cycling strategy. So it's hugely important to us that the new facilities also support the growth and development of our clubs and community. Through the Grow and Develop Clubs and Community cycling objective, we want to see multidiscipline hubs and facilities with safe coaching and skill development areas that support the growth and development of cycling clubs and hubs. If the main applicant of your project is not a club, we still want to see connections with all the local clubs and community groups to ensure that the facility will help them grow and develop. And we really encourage those partnerships to take place. Projects that are working with Scottish cycling affiliated clubs will be prioritised. However, if there is not a Scottish cycling club in the area, we can look to support you to develop one through our club development team. We're also keen to see projects linking in with local community groups. These links will help applicants demonstrate the demand for the facility and evidence how it will be activated and how it will help grow cycling. Through the final objective of grow and develop local and regional event opportunities, we want to enable local and regional festivals, competitions and events to provide people with more opportunities to experience cycling. This could be a local cycling festival, a come and try events, the opportunity to put on local and regional racing. And we want to ensure that people have the opportunity to experience different kinds of cycling in different environments. Multidiscipline hubs. On the previous slide, we mentioned that we're looking to develop this as a concept. And particularly looking at the objectives 2 and 3, which are centred on growing and developing our club network and also growing and developing our local and regional event opportunities. Therefore, we really want to have people thinking about how do we create these club and hub and event projects that offer more than one type of cycling discipline. This is where we really encourage all applicants into this fund to be innovative and really to think about how they can use their local area and their local spaces that they may have access to develop these facilities on in the best way possible. Because we really do believe that by having this multidiscipline approach, we can attract multi-different discipline groups and have really and have the ability for people to try lots of different disciplines and so they can find the one thing that they love in cycling, and we know they will find something. Because we want to see pump tracks alongside closed road circuits, BMX tracks at the same sites as outdoor velodromes. We want to see cyclocross and mountain biking together, and perhaps even speedway alongside learn to ride areas. We believe that by supporting the development of multidiscipline hubs will provide more people with more opportunities to experience these different types of cycling. And these here are just a list of ideas. We really look forward, we're already seeing it as we see the expressions of interest coming in, that people have got really innovative ideas, and we really want to encourage people to really think about how they can really grow cycling within their area, and then how will that facility help them to do that. At this point as well, I'd like to emphasise the area of focus for this fund and highlight a few areas which will not be eligible for awards through this fund. We will aim to provide local and community facilities. The fund aims to deliver, said before, a lasting impact as a result of the Cycling World Championships. The fund isn't really about providing, it is not about providing elite cycling racing facilities. Facility developments required for the hosting of the competition in 2023 will not be supported through this fund, and project actors in this category should have direct conversations with Sport Scotland about ways that Sport Scotland may be able to help them. Equally, this fund is focused on dedicated cycling facilities and cannot make awards for active travel or multi-use paths. We are working with other cycling agencies, active travel partners, and partners who are engaged in developing the environment to link new and existing facilities up to cycle networks where possible. We really do think that that's a really important thing that people should be looking at and considering. Even though we won't be funding it, we would really want to make sure that as many people can cycle to their facility and their new facility as possible. So a join with active travel is inevitable, but we will not be funding the active travel element of this programme. However, what we will do as well, if we do see ones coming in from there and we don't think it's eligible for this fund, we will look to signpost any of these applications to other funding partners if they cannot make this particular fund. This fund as well has project strands. Awards to the fund will split into two different strands: Inspire the Nation to Cycle projects and Club, Hub and Event projects. Inspire the Nation to Cycle projects must deliver against the Inspire the Nation Cycle objective and can apply for up to 50% of the eligible project costs, up to a maximum of £100,000. Projects, though, located in 20% of an SIMD area may apply for up to 75% of the eligible project costs. Graham Finney from Sport Scotland will be covering more of this in detail later on this evening. We do, naturally, with this funding level going into it, expect these Inspire the Nation cycling projects to be smaller, open community access facilities such as skills areas, pump tracks, small mountain bike loops, BMX freestyle activities, trials areas, and other. What we'd look to do as well is how can people be creative around that and try and create as many multidiscipline hubs within that area there as well. But we do expect them to be smaller projects and less strategic. Club, Hub and Event projects, no, they may apply for up to 65% of the eligible project costs, up to a total of £500,000. These projects must meet at least one of the GROW objectives. These being grow and develop club and community cycling, or grow and develop local and regional event opportunities. Projects can work towards meeting both of these objectives, but it's not necessary. But obviously, the more money you're looking for, the more we will look to see how those things meet our overall objectives. We really do think, though, that the club, hub and event projects should really be multidiscipline and offer more than one type of cycling, as outlined on our previous slide there. I'm now going to hand over to Graham Finney, who's going to provide with more detail on an application and award process. Over to yourself, Graham.
Thanks, Graham. So Graham's covered a few things already about projects that we will and won't cover. So there's things that we need to be clear about why we won't focus on funding certain things. The objectives are clear. The types of projects are clear within the guidelines. Graham's already shown a couple of slides with the diagrams that were there. The types of projects we're looking for were modelled and based on the strategy for cycling, Scottish cycling and developing mountain biking, and they're clearly based on the disciplines that are supported by Scottish cycling. That's one of the main reasons we're not looking to support active travel, and that's because there's other funding available for active travel. The other question that comes up quite a lot with Sport Scotland funding is about equipment. And one of the main reasons we're not going to be looking to fund equipment is because it tends to have a lifespan of under 10 years. And the prescription period for lottery funding is 20 years. And therefore, the equipment would be beyond its useful life before the conditions of award are actually lapsed. There's other reasons behind it as well, is that we want to make a bigger impact in facilities that will last a lot longer and have a bigger impact. There's a number of things within the guidance documents that we're also looking to make sure that we're really focusing on within the funding, and that's making sure that they're inclusive, responsive, person-centered, collaborative within communities, and are delivered at the highest standards. And really that's the focus for what we're trying to do with these built facilities with this fund. As Graham's alluded to, we're looking at new sites, we're looking at possibly adding things to existing sites, but they do have to be dedicated cycling facilities. They do have to be traffic free. And when we say traffic, we don't just mean cars. We have had inquiries for people looking for bridle paths. Also, with active travel, you do see a lot of people walking on there as well, and that can impact on the quality of the cycling experience that we're trying to deliver. When we look at ancillary facilities, we're looking at trying to add them to an existing facility, not just in isolation. So storage where there's no track, or storage where there's no club facilities that are delivering training. We really want to try and make sure that they are integrated into an existing facility or part of a larger project that's coming to us through the expressions of interest. So when we're looking at these types of facilities, that's really why, if we get these expressions of interest, looking at isolated storage units, or something that's maybe at a school site where they won't have access after school hours, unfortunately we'll be unable to fund those. But what we will do, and Graham alluded to earlier, we would like to work with you to find other partners and other people who can help you grow and develop your projects. So that's really where the objectives and the types of projects we're looking for. There's probably a few other things that we might not fund in isolation, but we will look at them as a package if they come forward as a larger facility project. Graham, could you move me on one? In terms of the process, it all starts with an expression of interest. What we're trying to do here is engage with you guys as the people who are interested in delivering a built facility. We're interested in starting that conversation, that discussion about who you are, what your project entails, who's going to use it, and what the impacts are going to be. And those impacts are about equality, inclusion, dedicated women's and girls projects, accessible projects, making sure there's as many people can access and use the facilities as possible, and how it all links back to the participation targets that Scottish Cycling and Developing Mountain Biking have. So those submissions that we see, they need to refer back to the guidance, they need to refer back to the club development structures that Graham's talked about, and the club development guys at both organisations will be really keen on helping you develop. And as Graham said, if you're not part of that network of clubs at the moment, we're really looking to try and see how we can help you facilitate and improve on those. And that's really where that expression of interest is about beginning of the conversation, the discussion with Sports Scotland staff on the potential development links to local authorities, and with the Scottish Cycling staff about the sport and the disciplines and the actual club development itself. Once you've submitted that expression of interest, we then go into a project development phase. What we mean by that is looking at what information you need to move on to get to a submission for an application. Some projects will be light touch. It might be that they just need a couple of tweaks or some additional information prior to submitting an application, or it could be that we're very hands-on between the two organisations, a number of different staff, or maybe even some external consultants looking to support the clubs with business development. Maybe there's a need for looking at some business planning, some organisational structures, and things like that. If there's things to do with asset transfer, we'll direct you towards costs. And the organisation set up with the Scottish Government to help and support asset transfer. And we'll look to see what other knowledge and experience we can bring to your projects and your outline ideas. So that project development there's a whole host of documents between all the organisations, but also within British Cycling, there's a lot of experience in developing facilities as well. The stuff you see up on your screen, that's the guidance that was developed between Developing Mountain Biking and Sports Scotland to help people develop facilities. But we have other experience as well across the teams with BMX tracks, pump tracks, and also closed loops all around Scotland. So we've got a huge amount of knowledge between Sports Scotland and the Scottish Cycling and Developed Mountain Biking to help you get the best facility possible. And when it comes to that funding profile, we do look to help support you with that and direct you to other sources of funding, linking you with other funders that we're aware of. And we'll also give you the best advice and guidance we can on how to build a project and the funding profile to suit your needs. It might be that we need to scale back and look at phasing a project. And one thing we've been really clear about is that with the smaller projects in here, if the funding runs out, the £8 million runs out, because this has been set up to run very closely with the Sports Facilities Fund, we can transfer the projects across that maybe don't make it if they're still eligible, and we're really keen to get them going. So whilst there is a need to manage the 8 million that is directly for cycling facilities, there is scope to continue working with projects and partners if the fund finishes or the funding is all allocated to projects before we get to the end of it. So there's a little bit of work that we can do to help you with that. Once we get to the stage where the project's all ready, we've got all the documentation in place, the funding profiles are looking really healthy, we can then progress to an application stage. And that means us submitting an application on through a process called MySport. So Graham, if you could move me on again. The MySport application process is really there to help us gather all the information, and that's filling in some additional information from that's in addition to the expression of interest, but it also allows you to upload the documentation you'll need. And within the assessment that we do later on, all the areas we need, the legalities, the potential documentation you'll have in terms of land ownership or the leases, the legalities of statutory planning, building warrants. We'll look at the operational side of things in terms of your plans and how you're going to manage and operate the facilities, maintenance and things like that as well. We'll look in detail into the finance of the project. We'll look at the finances of the organisation. If they've been around for some time, there'll be the financial accounts. And then there's the detail in terms of the design for the facility. And those are all those areas are dealt with by our assessors within Sports Scotland. When it comes to the design and the sports development side of things, we'll work in partnership with the teams at Scottish Cycling, Developing Mountain Biking, but we'll also lean on some of the guys at British Cycling if we need to, in terms of some of the disciplines that might need some assessment and some certification if they're needed for competition. The match funding details, Graham's already alluded to, it's 50% up to a maximum of £100,000, and the 75% for areas in the top 20% of SIMD. That SIMD is based on the Scottish Government's website that shows where the areas of SIMD are within Scotland, and those are the metrics we'll use to measure that. And within the larger projects, it's up to 65%, up to a maximum of £500,000. We do have discretion to look at the multi-hub facilities to see what impact and outcomes they are in terms of levels of funding. In terms of timescales, after your expression of interest, the project development phase really is something that is undeterminable. Some projects, as I say, were really quick. Others could take a few months, could take up to a year to get the project to a stage when it's actually able to apply. And once you get to apply, as I said, you register online for a MySport application. That gives us the club details. We start the application and fill out the forms. And then submitting the application means that it goes into Sports Scotland. We have all the information available. And we then go through a process of assessment, and it goes to our teams, and the guys will have a couple of weeks to assess what they get. If there's anything outstanding, we'll let you know, and we'll come back to you and ask and work with you. So what we don't do is, if there's anything missing, is reject the application. We'll work with you to make sure we get the information together and in the right formats as well. If documents don't upload properly, we'll come back to you and we'll hopefully get that sorted out. Once we go through this, start the assessment process, it takes about 8 weeks for us to get everybody to do their assessments, check all the documentation. And in some of the larger projects, it can be quite a task to get through all the legal documents, in particular contracts. And if we need to, there's also some legal mechanisms we might set up to protect the funding we put in place for the larger projects as well. So that all has to be taken into account. Once our guys have got all the details assessed, we've worked in partnership with the guys at Scottish Cycling, Development Mountain Biking to pull together a sports development assessment. And I have to say, that's the most important. Whilst we are actually doing a facilities project, the most important piece is actually what the impact is going to have on increasing numbers of participants, coaches and volunteers, because that is what the Scottish Government and that is what the National Lottery want to see. They want to see more people taking part. So it might look nice and shiny, but if nobody's using it, that is no good to us. So if we're seeing projects coming through and we can't see a demonstration of impact, we can't see a demonstration of club growth or growth and participation at the facilities, we might not be able to fund it, because we need to be able to demonstrate that. And that's the other side of the MySport platform. We use that to gather information from projects, from participants, from the governing body guys at Scottish Cycling as well, about how they're growing participation and coaching and how everything's trying to move forward and improve in that area. So we'll use the MySport to gather information and let the guys at Scottish Government know what impact that funding has had on cycling, and that hopefully allows us to continue to fund and grow and develop projects that will support the sports. Once we get to the end of that 2-week period, we have a set of panel meetings that allow us to review the projects together. We'll standardise the assessments to make sure there's no anomalies. Maybe somebody scored a little bit high, somebody scored a little bit low, so we'll balance that out so it's all fair. And then we'll take it to a panel and it will be assessed by that panel, and hopefully the outcomes are positive. I say that because hopefully through the project development phase, we'll have ironed out all the kinks and we should be ready to go prior to the application process starting. Once we've made that assessment and you've been fortunate enough to get an award, we'll send out the offer of award, which is a contract document. There'll be sets of conditions in there. Some of them will be legal. There'll be financial conditions, but then there'll also be the sports development conditions that we will ask you to report on. So if you tell us you're going to set up women's and girls programs, we'll ask you to report on that. We'll ask you to tell us how successful that's been. We want to know that our investment into your project has actually given us the outcomes we're looking for both ourselves, Scottish Cycling, and our funding bodies in terms of the lottery and Scottish Government. And that really is where I think I'll leave it, because I could probably go into a lot more detail and spend a lot more time on the process side of things, but it's just to give you guys an understanding of what you will have to do to get to a process, an application stage. But my colleagues within the facilities team, we've been doing this for a number of years, some of them well over 10 years. And Graham and the guys at Scottish Cycling have been around the sport for a long time. So hopefully we can get the projects to a stage that when you go to the submission on MySport, everything's ready to go and we should be plain sailing to get to that assessment point, and hopefully you get your offers of award and we can start building things. So that's me for the moment. Hopefully there's some questions coming in the chat and Fraser can let us know what's going on.
Thank you very much, Graham. Really useful and informative overview of the fund, and the process behind it. Without further ado, I can see a kind of numbers ringing at the top of my screen here. And what I think we'll do is we'll stop sharing this and just have my on the screen, and I'll offer it to Fraser, who I think will be coming through and asking us questions. So yeah, over to you, Fraser.
All right, I didn't think I was going to speak. I thought I was just going to type to them, but that's okay. First question coming through was about whether the fund covers the cost of feasibility studies.
Because we've got a finite resource, we're not looking to fund feasibility studies. That's something that hopefully, if we get an expression of interest from you, we can start to work up with you and look at who, because the funding for feasibility studies tends to be different across the country. Some areas have got it within local authorities. There might be something coming from enterprise sectors. So if you just send your expression of interest, then we'll try and help you within your local area.
Yeah, and that will also depend as well on what type of organisation you're applying from as well. Businesses have different avenues, like Graham says, through enterprise agencies. Community groups have often third sector funders who will come in because they know that feasibility studies need to be developed so that good projects can happen. And local authorities, we would certainly hope may have some resources that they'll be able to put into that to fund that themselves, to look at that or attract in other funding as well. So please don't let that be a stop for you to put in an expressive interest form for it, and keep investigating as you wait to hear back from us if your expression of interest has been successful or not.
Cool, thanks for that. Second question was around SIMD areas. So Graham, you touched a little bit on SIMD towards the end. Is it based on proximity to an SIMD area, or does the facility have to be within it?
Well, ideally, it would be easier to see it in the SIMD area, but if there's something on the fringe of an SIMD area, what we would look to do is work with the main groups to see how they're going to impact on that, or how are they going to work with those people. So if they are having a significant impact on that area of SIMD and working with the young people in that area, then if it's impacting on that area, we can look at that to see how we could help support that with a higher funding figure.
Sure. Next question was just around if there's a minimum amount you can apply for through the fund.
Yes.
Yeah.
10,000, I think, Graham, if memory serves me right.
Yes, so that's based on the fact that through our support to Awards for All, the maximum awards you can get from Awards for All is 10,000. So that really looks at a minimum project cost of 20,000, because obviously then 50% of that would be 10. So that's really where it's based on, because if the project and the costs are that low, then we can advise you to make an Awards for All application.
If you're successful and have an offer of award, is there a timescale for building the project?
Yeah, so in general, we put a timescale of up to 2 months to get the project started, and then we give you 12 months, or depending on the type of project, slightly longer, but we will look to put timescales in. Now, that is flexible. Obviously, we know from experience and having been in the construction sector for a long time that some periods are not the best for building things, especially some mountain bike areas where they're very high up, difficult to get materials to, but also with snow and ice, it can be challenging to actually work the ground. So we will be flexible working with you on a timescale. If you tell us the project's going to start in a certain month, we'll work flexibly around that so that we can see how that would impact on the funding timescales. But yeah, in general, we try and put some timescales on it so that it's not an indefinite offer of awards sitting there, because that would be detrimental to us having money sat in an account that's not being spent. The government would ask us why it's not being spent. So we need to put timescales on it. If you get to the end of that funding period, when the money is due to be spent and you've not started, we will go through a significant review with you and challenge you on whether or not the project will start. Because if that money can't be spent, we will withdraw the award and then hopefully put it towards another project which can start soon. Because it is a real difficulty for us to sit with money in an account not being spent. The government really, and lottery, will question us on that if it goes to that. So yeah, we've got timescales of when you've got to start. And as I said, we'll be flexible depending on what it is and where, but we've also got timescales for the money to be spent. What we tend to look at in terms of that period for being spent is the end period for the contract, and then add possibly a month or two just looking at how people maybe would complete a final account. Maybe there's other things that would need to be sorted out in terms of some details, some things that need to be finished off that maybe isn't being done by a main contractor. So yeah, there is timescales.
Cool, thanks for that, Graham. Probably another one for Graham McLean. Would we benefit from getting an audit of stakeholders before applying? And can we put in training for mountain bike leaders in developing programs for our different user groups?
Can you say the first part of it again?
Yeah, would we benefit from getting an audit of stakeholders before applying for the fund?
I'm not quite sure what that means, if I'm honest. I mean, I think the expression of interest is a fairly simple form and things as well. I don't think there's a need to sort of do a massive amount of project development before you put into that expression of interest. You do need to have a reasonable amount of realism around putting that in, because it would certainly help. It helps us and it helps yourself if that comes in. If it's a realistic proposal, it seems proportionate for your area and the impact it's going to have in doing it. It doesn't need to be fully developed though in a lot of different ways. Obviously, the further on you have with it, the better. But it doesn't need to be fully developed. I think put that in there, and then let's work together to work that up. And this project though is, and Graham will correct me if I'm using the right words here, but this is a capital fund, so this is around the facilities themselves. This is not around about the sort of the training up of people to then develop those facilities. There is a number of different funding pots available for that, and that would be what we'd like to see almost as well, is that groups consider that. And actually, as they consider that and are actually investing and trying to get funding into their area to grow clubs, to grow the number of leaders that they have in anticipation of facilities coming. That's the sort of thing that actually helps you build a stronger application and brings yourself up to it, because it can seem that you've been proactive as a group, that people have worked with people and they got it ready so that when the facility comes, that club can then grow and it has the capacity to then take in more people. We also understand, like, don't get us wrong, this isn't just around clubs. We don't see cycling as the same as football or rugby, where it's a club and then the facility sits empty. We know pump tracks, small white skills areas, closed road loops, they're all used recreationally as well. But that's fantastic. But we do think that clubs can play an important role in introducing new people who maybe can't afford equipment into the sport, giving people great experiences in it so they can get led and coached up to ability. And then as well, if people, if children and young people in particular show an appetite to then want to go on and become to develop their cycling up and become kind of world class in their performance, we hope that clubs can help be a part of that journey for them as well. So clubs are playing an important part in this as well. So
great stuff, thanks. I'm going to group a couple of questions now together, just because we've got quite a lot coming through. Has the funders of the Cycling Facilities Fund given any criteria to meet in terms of geographical coverage across Scotland? And will support in kind be considered eligible as part of match funding?
I'll take the second one first. Support in kind has always been something we've looked at, but what I would say was it has to be realistic. It has to be something that will contribute to the construction of the facility. So yeah, it is there. It's something that we'll assess, but it has to, as I say, it has to be realistic. It has to actually contribute to the facility project. In terms of the criteria on a geographic coverage, that was something we actually looked at as part of the strategic approach for this. We looked at what facilities are there around Scotland. We've looked at how they're used, and we looked at what gaps there are. So we have looked at that strategically. In terms of being told we have to get a geographical spread, that's something we've not really had from anyone. Certainly it's not something we'll be sticking to, but as I said before, if the fund runs out and we've maybe not got something in a specific geographic area, there are still opportunities to apply to the Sports Facilities Fund if the money is all allocated, or if it's timed out, because this is only there's only 3 years left on the fund, I think, from the Scottish Government side of things. So yeah, we'll look at trying to spread the money across the country as best possible. but that can be challenging if we don't get applications from specific areas.
Cool, thanks, Graham. Back on SIMD again, obviously the amount of funding that can be committed up to 75% for SIMD areas. Does this only apply for Inspire the Nation Cycle project, so up to 100k, or can it also apply to the other group of projects too?
Yes, but again, it'll be dependent on the size and of the project. Yeah, so it could be 75% up to $500,000.
I think
you're right there, Graham. Yeah.
Cool. Can an award be granted when there are other contributing bodies involved in the project?
Yes. So we will look for that funding profile. We'll look for other funding partners to come in, other bodies involved. If it's a group, if the question's about is there a group of people in the project and not one group, what we'll look for is some kind of lead applicant, or we'll look for some kind of arrangement where they're all there's a connection between them. Maybe a memorandum of understanding or something similar. Depends on the type of project, but we'll look at anything in terms of multiple funders. Well, I've seen projects where there's been up to 20 funders involved just to try and get it over the line, and I've seen projects where there's been 2 or 3 different groups trying to get things working in partnership.
Cool, thanks, Graham. Next question: would you be looking for facilities to be available to everyone 24/7? This is from a school point of view. Access to school grounds after hours can sometimes be an issue. We'd be looking to try and ensure that local authority would support accessibility. Yeah,
we've come across that before. 24/7 is a bit of an ask. Be interesting to see what operator would do that. Certainly with pump tracks and things, it would depend on lighting. But in the schools estate, it obviously can be a challenge. There are certain types of facilities with the operating model that maybe don't open after school's hours. And that's a challenge for us because we do need them to have community use. We do need them to have out of school hours access. So if a school makes an application, or a local authority makes an application at a school that isn't available after school day, then it won't get funding through us at Sport Scotland because our criteria is community use, not just schools use.
Great stuff. A question over on YouTube. Someone's asked about. It talks about in the application about demonstrating the impact of the facility. They're just looking for kind of more elaboration on how they'd look to do that.
Okay, from a Sport Scotland point of view, that impact would be an increase in participation, increases in coaching. We'd look at how they are connecting with changing lives through sport. We'd look at how they can impact on their community through that changing lives through sport. And also how they are improving on the specific areas of women's and girls, disability, and across that inclusion agenda. There's probably a few more that cycling will want to see, but that's a specific Sport Scotland area. Graham, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the Scottish cycling strategy, we definitely see girls and women as an area of growth, as well as young people. We also want to see clubs, so that for the reasons outlined in the last time I spoke, people have been helped into the sport and making it more accessible. And we also want to see facilities that can host more cycling festivals, more events, and open up our sport to a more diverse range of people.
Great stuff. Are applications going to be looked upon more favourably if they're from an existing club, or can they be a joint application with a community group? And also, I guess connected to that, what governance guidance is expected for applicants? So is there an expectation that applicants would, for example, be a SKIO?
Yeah, because we're looking across the range of community facilities, the organisation can be wide and varied. Whilst we would like to see a number of clubs coming in so we can grow and develop that area, if you are a SKIO or any other type of organisation, really the key criteria is they have to be a constituted organisation. But we can help with people or direct them to the right organisation to help them set up that organisation in terms of that structure, so that it suits them best. probably not the place to go into the detail of different types of organisations and things like that, but certainly the key one is that they're constituted organisations.
And Fraser, from a sort of cycling group perspective versus club perspective, I think we understand that some of our rural areas in Scotland in particular, actually forming a club and sustaining it would be a challenge due to the number of cyclists that are maybe existing in the area. But maybe if there's a local school club that will be looking to increase the number of leaders that are in it, that are looking to increase the number of coaches that are within it, or if there is other groups, young people's groups, scouts, leadership, outdoor groups, other groups that they could tie in, youth centre groups, or other groups that they could tie in to work around it. We would be interested in seeing that, because it's the impact we want to have this from a facility, and not just the number of clubs. We just know that clubs are a way of creating that impact.
Good stuff. 2 questions here related to applications, probably for Graham Finney. The first one is around how many quotes are required for works undertaken through the fund, and also if applications are successful, how is the funding released?
So we'll look for a tender process, minimum 3 contractors, and it has to be assessed properly. That's just general. If it's a larger project, it might come under different rules, but we'll advise on that at the time. If it's working in partnership with a local authority, they may have a particular procurement route that they will take you through just for audit purposes for them. What was the second part of that? It was
if application successful, how is funding released?
Yeah, so we have a process whereby we pay out on invoice. So we'll ask you to send in a form that tells us how much money has been paid to the contractors. So we pay on invoice, and we pay the percentage of award based on invoice, and we'll look to see the receipts of that money's been paid to the contractors as well. It's an audit for us in terms of how we spend that money, and we'll pay out within 14 days, so that if you've got a 21-day period for payment, generally we get it quicker than that, but we can turn that around very quickly so that you're paying your contractor very quickly, and we pay by BACS transfer directly into your account, so you can then put it straight back out to the contractor. So we will look to get your bank details and things like that, so that when you send in your forms to us, we can then get that process started as quickly as possible.
Good stuff. Can a group apply for more than one project?
Yes, provided they're showing different or greater impacts. So if you're to apply for a project and then look to apply again, but there's no significant change, or the project's not substantially different, or it's not in a different area. So if a project, say, thinking of a group maybe that's got multiple sites, if they're looking at two projects across multiple sites, yes, you can do that, but you'd have to show that you're not trying to use the same people to create the numbers.
Well,
you want to see greater impact across both sites.
Yep. Will donations of machinery, materials and voluntary work count towards the match funding?
Yeah, that sits back in the in-kind contributions. That's something we'll assess and make sure that it's actually contributing towards the project.
Does state aid de minimis apply to this?
State aid's an interesting one. I've never been challenged on that yet with a project, and we'll see what projects come in that might have that attributed to it. So never something I've come across in a facilities project.
Cool. We just had a question, and I was just going to go and come on to it. We had a question about VAT. So I don't know how do you want to cover that one? I think we'll leave that to Graham Finney.
I'll give a generic overview of VAT because it's incredibly complicated. VAT situation changes across the country. We've seen projects of the exact same type being assessed differently. We've seen projects where they've been advised by their VAT accountants and solicitors that they should be VAT exempt. HMRC have taken a different view and charged them full VAT. Now, in one case in my 11 years at Sport Scotland, the club went to tribunal. They won. It went to appeal from HMRC, it went to appeal to the club, and the club won again. So it is a really long and lengthy process. It was over 3 years. So our advice, our best advice is you need to make sure you get very good substantial legal advice on your VAT situation. The projects are based on the total project cost. So if your project includes VAT, that is covered in the funding award from the Cycling Fund. If there is a portion of that fund VAT that is then reclaimed, then we'll pay out on the percentage that is actually paid to HMRC, not the, and what we'll do is make sure that you've got the cash flow available to do that, because that can be a really tricky situation. Quite often it's part of a negotiation with the successful contractors to make sure that they're aware of that situation, because what we're aware of is a lot of community groups and charitable groups don't have significant reserves to cover the shortfall that happens when you have to pay out the VAT in full, and then the time it takes to recover that VAT during a construction program. So we'll work with you, and we'll work with the contractors and your consultants to try and make sure that process is manageable, but we will only pay out on the actual project costs. So if there's a VAT recoverable, we won't pay out on that.
That was pretty concise, so we'll take that. Next question then, if we apply for 10,000 for a 20,000 project, are we required to have 10,000 in our bank account prior to making the application?
What we will say, you don't have the money in the account. You just have to have the other funders committing the monies to you. So we will look at either emails or letters with confirmation that the funding is in place, or that it will be available once the project starts. So in a similar situation to us, we'll give you the offer of award, which is the legal documents. You then have a period to get all the funding in place, sign up your contractors who've been the lowest tenderer or the best tenderer. So within that period, there's a bit of work to do, and we'll continue to support you through that. We will then give you an authorization to start, which is similar to a lot of other funders. They give you a second letter. Once they're comfortable that other funders is in place, and Graham's probably aware that there are funders who need and have to be the last person in place. So Leader, and for all the guys up north, HIE, Highlands and Islands Enterprise, demand that they're the last funder in place. So we have to work with that to make sure that all the funders are there, because what a lot of funders don't do is give you the money up front. They're very similar to Sports Scotland. They'll pay out based on invoice and a percentage, or an agreed lump sum at various stages. So you won't get all your money in the bank once you get an offer of award from us and most of the other funders.
Cool, that helps. Yeah, perfect. Got time probably for one last question, really. Is buying land an eligible cost under the fund?
The purchase of land is not something that we would fund speculatively for projects. It's not something that we'll look to support, because it basically puts money into buying property that might never actually turn into a sports facility. If there is a project that includes the cost of buying the property, then we'll need to assess that and consider it at the time. But in general, we try and steer away from purchases of land. That's a difficult one, and there may be better routes to purchase as well, long-term leases and things like that, because taking on an asset can be quite challenging. But there is also funding available for groups to support purchases of land. That's why another reason why we stay away of it. Similar to why we stay away from active travel, because there are significant bodies of funding available to help support that.
Just to add to that, Fraser, as well, just to say that I think the way we've tried to structure the process behind this as well is that if people think that might be a barrier, we'd still encourage them to put an expression of interest in, and then we can start having that dialogue and then see if it is a barrier to doing it and put it in. So I think that's why, certainly when Sports Scotland said that this was a process they're looking to use behind this, we were fully supportive of that, because it really means that we've got the best opportunity to work with groups and bring forward the best projects to happen. as well. Just a couple of things that sprung to mind, just some of those questions as well that go in there as well. I think one of the things as well that we'd like to see as well, just when people were talking about contractors, we would really want to make sure that competent contractors come into this. And how do we achieve that? Well, there's actually Graham flagged up that we've got advice on that, on how to do it, and there's certain forms we'd like to use within that. So if people have got questions around that, please do that, but please make sure that you have a good process and where it learns that price is not your only consideration when going out to tender from groups, that you are looking to ensure that there is competent contractors within this, and we get the best possible facilities developed and delivered by experts. A final one as well, I was thinking as well, is around about groups from the same geographic area or in proximity to each other. What we definitely would like to see as groups, to give everybody the best chance of success, is to see collaboration between those groups, to see communication, collaboration, and how you would work together to then really develop cycling within your area. If that meant that we had multidiscipline, venue race series that are going to be started because there's going to be a cluster of new facilities being dropped into an area, that certainly increases your chances of doing that. So really make sure that through this process that your club, whatever area you're in, doesn't think that actually going into isolation gives you the best chance because you're fighting with the other clubs in that area for this fund. Please don't think like that. There's £8 million into the cycling facilities fund. It's not going to be every proposal in Scotland is going to be able to come forward with this, but it's going to really help us develop a great network of facilities. But we would really encourage you to work together to look at how you can create the biggest impact within your area, and then hopefully the facilities will then be able to be delivered as free as well. So that was just a couple of things that sprung to mind for myself there. Anything else from yourself, Graham?
Yeah, just bear with us. We've not got a big team. There's 4 project managers, 2 lead managers, so there's not a lot of people dealing with 80 plus expressive interest in working with the local authorities. We're doing some strategic work with them to try and identify projects within local authorities and prioritise how we work together with them to also help some of you guys as a community group. So there's a fair body of work we're going through, and the guys at Scottish Cycling and Developing Mountain Biking are not big teams either. So please bear with us. We will get back to you. We will give you as much support and help as possible once we can make contact. So bear with us, please, because we will do our best.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Graham Finney. Thank you to everybody who's stayed on for this Scottish Cycling webinar tonight. As I said at the start, this will be made available through Scottish Cycling's YouTube channel from tomorrow. There has been a lot of information going across tonight. We understand that and do that. Please, though, this is mostly contained. In fact, it's all contained within the Cycling Fund guidelines. So go back into that and look through that and do that. And yeah, we really look forward to working with proposals. And like Graham says, we are all working in small teams with pretty wide remits as well. So please bear with us. And together we're going to do a great job, and we're going to really see cycling grow as a result of this fund. And I look forward to working with a lot of you in developing that. So thank you.